Hello friends, I'm glad to see you on my channel. Enjoy watching.
Liam Sinclair had always thought his marriage to Emma was rock solid. They had met in high school, fallen in love, and married before they even turned 20. Together, they raised 3 wonderful children, each of whom grew up to be resilient, caring, and successful in their own right. Over 4 decades, Liam and Emma had built a life together, a partnership that weathered highs and lows, laughter and tears. Their friends often teased them for being the old married couple who still held hands. In a world where relationships came and went, Liam wore his marriage like a badge of honor. It was on a cold Tuesday morning that this world crumbled around him. Liam woke up to an empty bed, the scent of fresh coffee drifting from the kitchen. It wasn't unusual for Emma to be up before him, but when he walked downstairs, he noticed her demeanor was different. She was dressed sharply, more than usual for a typical workday, and her eyes seemed distant. After exchanging good morning pleasantries, she took a deep breath, fidgeting with her coffee cup. "Liam," she said, her voice unsteady but resolute, "there's something I need to tell you." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning he couldn't yet grasp. "What is it?" he asked, trying to keep his tone light, though he felt a prickling at the back of his neck. "Did something happen?" "Yes, in a way," she said, sighing. "I've been thinking about us, our life, a marriage. And I don't know how else to say this, but I need to experience something different. I want to know what else is out there before it's too late." Liam froze, his heart pounding. He struggled to process what she was saying. They had talked through so many difficult issues over the years, confiding in each other like best friends. But this was something he never saw coming. His voice quivered as he asked, Are you saying you want a divorce?" Emma shook her head quickly, almost defensively. "No, Liam, not a divorce. Just a break, a chance to see what I've been missing. I've never been with anyone else. I thought I could live with that, but I can't ignore these thoughts anymore. I need to date other people just to see." The word struck him like a slap. Liam's world spun, his chest tightening with a pain he couldn't describe. He staggered back, gripping the counter for support as the room went dark. When he regained consciousness, he was lying in a hospital bed, his chest bandaged, the sterile smell of antiseptic in the air. The doctor explained that he had suffered a massive heart attack, one they called a widowmaker. Surviving it was rare, the doctor said, but with the stent in place, he had a good chance at recovery. He was barely able to process the words. Emma's revelation lingered in his mind, replaying like a haunting melody he couldn't escape. His daughters visited him one by one, each offering their love and support, but he could see they were struggling to understand what had happened. He hadn't told them the whole story, and he wasn't sure he ever would. Alone in his hospital bed, Liam wrestled with his feelings of betrayal and sadness. He still loved Emma, despite everything, and he yearned to understand why she felt the need to stray after a lifetime together. Was our love not enough? He wondered. Did I fail her somehow? In the following weeks, Emma moved out, staying with their youngest daughter, Chloe, to give him space to recover. Yet in the silence of their once shared home, Liam felt trapped in a void, haunted by memories of a love he once thought would last forever. Friends and family encouraged him to confront Emma, to either mend the marriage or cut ties, but he wasn't ready. He felt like an open wound, unable to face her without unraveling. Months passed. Slowly, Liam began to reclaim his life, though each step forward felt like a betrayal of the life he once had with Emma. He began attending a support group, meeting others who had gone through similar heartbreaks, and it was there that he found something unexpected: peace. It wasn't closure, exactly, but a new kind of resilience. One evening, after a particularly heavy support group session, Liam returned home and took a long look around. Every room held echoes of their life together. The laughter, the quiet evenings reading together, the countless holiday dinners around the table. But now, each memory felt like a weight around his neck, anchoring him to a past he could never return to. With a sigh, he opened his laptop and began researching. Within days, he'd found a suitable RV, a sturdy, reliable motorhome that would take him anywhere he wanted to go. He sold the family home, transferred ownership to Emma, and packed his essentials into the RV, leaving everything else behind. It was time to start a new chapter, one where he could rediscover who he was outside of his marriage. As he drove away from the house for the last time, Liam felt a strange blend of grief and liberation. The miles rolled beneath him, carrying him further from the life he once knew and closer to the unknown. He kept no phone, only a single email address for his daughters to contact him. They were his only tether to his old life, and he loved them too much to sever it entirely. Over the next few years, Liam traveled the country, living simply and finding solace in solitude. He learned to enjoy his own company, reflecting on his marriage with a clarity that time and distance afforded him. He stopped by small-town diners, hiked trails that led to stunning views, and found peace in quiet moments alone under the stars. He had come to understand that while he hadn't been enough for Emma, he was enough for himself. Occasionally, he'd receive an email from one of his daughters. They'd tell him that Emma had grown distant, that she had started dating but seemed unhappy, restless. Liam read their messages with a quiet sadness but didn't respond, knowing that whatever happened to Emma was beyond his control. One day, years later, while watching a sunset from a secluded beach, Liam reflected on his journey. He realized he no longer held resentment toward Emma. He wished her well wherever she was. She had been part of his story, but she no longer defined it. In that moment, Liam felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life hadn't turned out the way he planned, but it had led him to a peace he hadn't thought possible. He took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp evening air, and smiled. The past was behind him, and for the first time in a long while, he felt ready to embrace the future, wherever it might lead. Liam stayed on that beach long after the sun dipped below the horizon, watching the stars slowly emerge in the twilight sky. In their quiet presence, he felt a profound calm that resonated deep within him, a peace born of acceptance and resilience. For years, he had lived for others, first for Emma, then for his children. Now, he was finally learning to live for himself. As he traveled, his life became a collection of fleeting encounters and small, meaningful connections. In a mountain town in Colorado, he met Rose, an older woman who ran a bookstore and cafe. She had a gentle smile and a quiet humor that reminded him of a younger version of himself. She didn't pry into his past, and he didn't offer any details, but their easy conversations over coffee and well-worn books became a small source of comfort. When it was time for him to move on, she gave him a book of poetry, inscribing a simple message inside the cover. May you always find joy in the journey. In the vast plains of Nebraska, he shared a campsite with a young couple who were just starting their lives together. They had a child on the way and a long road ahead of them, and as he listened to them talk about their dreams and fears, he offered small pieces of advice, things he'd learned about relationships and trust. They stayed up late around a fire, laughing and telling stories, and when Liam left the next morning, the young man shook his hand and said, "Thank you. You've given us more than you know." These encounters reminded Liam of the beauty in shared moments, even if they were temporary. They allowed him to embrace a new way of living, one that wasn't bound by expectation or permanence. The world, he realized, was full of people just like him, searching, growing, learning to let go of the past and embrace what lay ahead. One morning, after years on the road, Liam received a letter from his eldest daughter, Grace. It was one of her rare physical letters, and he cherished these glimpses into her life. She wrote to tell him that she'd been thinking of him often and shared her excitement about a promotion at work. Then she told him that Emma had been asking about him, saying she missed him even after all this time. She wasn't happy, Grace said, but that was no longer Liam's concern. His life was his own, and so was hers. Liam folded the letter carefully, placing it inside his favorite book for safekeeping. He felt compassion for Emma, but he had finally come to understand that her journey was separate from his. She had made her choices, and he had made his. They had each found their way, even if that way led them apart. For the first time, he felt he could truly forgive her, and, just as importantly, forgive himself. Years continued to roll by, and Liam grew older, his hair a little grayer, his steps a little slower. One evening, he parked his RV by a vast, quiet lake, setting up a small campfire as the stars began to shimmer above. He sat in his folding chair, looking out over the still water, reflecting on the life he had lived. He thought about the love he had once shared with Emma and how deeply it had shaped him. He thought about his children, now grown, each building their own lives. He thought about the strangers he had met on his journey, the fleeting yet powerful connections that had enriched his life in ways he hadn't expected. As he sat there, he felt a sense of wholeness. The past, with all its heartaches and joys, had led him here. Every hardship, every loss, every lesson had brought him to this place, where he finally felt at peace with who he was and the life he had chosen. And as he watched his reflection in the glassy lake, he saw not a man defined by heartbreak, but a man who had rebuilt himself from the ground up. He was whole again, and as he closed his eyes to the gentle sounds of the night, he felt nothing but gratitude. Liam Sinclair had found his way home, not to a place, but to himself. And in the vast, open world, he was finally free. As Liam sat by the fire, he began to reminisce on the life that had led him to this quiet lakeside. The flicker of flames cast long shadows around him, and he watched the embers rise and vanish into the night sky, much like the pieces of his old life that had faded into memory. He thought back to his early days with Emma, the thrill of young love, and the joy of building a life together. It was a time when they were inseparable, laughing and dreaming about the future, blissfully unaware of the challenges life would bring. He remembered their first home, a tiny, run-down apartment where they could barely make rent. They had scraped together every dollar, working late nights and sharing laughter over cheap dinners, but they were happy then, so in love that nothing else seemed to matter. Every hardship was softened by Emma's smile, every worry chased away by the warmth of her touch. Those were the days when life felt infinite, as though they had all the time in the world to build a life together. But as years went on, life became busier, filled with responsibilities, children, and careers. They had moments of closeness, yes, but Liam realized now that they had also drifted in small, almost imperceptible ways. Their conversations, once endless and filled with shared dreams, had become about logistics and responsibilities, then, at some point, about silence. Somewhere along the way, they had stopped asking each other how they truly felt. He couldn't pinpoint when the distance began. Maybe it had been years in the making, creeping in through unnoticed cracks. His children, too, had been the light of his life. He remembered the early mornings of packing lunches and driving them to school, the late nights spent waiting up for them to come home safely. They had been the center of his world, and though they were now adults with lives of their own, he knew they carried pieces of him wherever they went. Liam felt pride in knowing they were out in the world, facing life with strength, kindness, and independence, traits he and Emma had worked so hard to instill in them. It was through his children that Liam had first found the courage to forgive himself. He had poured so much love into them, raising them with as much compassion and understanding as he could muster, and he could see now that the love he gave them was proof that he was more than his mistakes, more than his regrets. The bond he shared with them was unbreakable, even as they lived lives far from his. But forgiveness had taken time, and his journey through loneliness had not been easy. In the early days of his travels, he had struggled with self-doubt, wondering if he had made the right choices, replaying every conversation with Emma, wishing he could rewrite their ending. He wrestled with anger, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of loss that would come over him at odd moments. A sight, a smell, a song on the radio that would bring back the memories. Some nights, he felt a deep, unshakable sadness, missing the family gatherings and the sense of home he once knew. But gradually, he found strength in solitude, discovering that he didn't need anyone's validation to feel whole. Over time, Liam learned to appreciate the beauty of his own company. The vast landscapes he traveled became mirrors, reflecting back his own resilience and helping him find clarity. The mountains, deserts, and oceans, each new and unfamiliar, felt like chapters in his life that he hadn't yet read. He reveled in the freedom of being untethered, going wherever he pleased, making his own decisions, and living entirely on his own terms. He had grown close to a few people along the way, like Rose, the bookstore owner with the kind eyes and warm laugh. Their connection had been special, unexpected yet deeply healing. She had taught him to appreciate the small, gentle moments, to savor the present without clinging to the past. Though he and Rose had parted ways, he carried the memory of her kindness like a balm over the scars of his heart. The more he traveled, the more he realized that life was not a series of certainties, but of transformations. Each new place, each stranger's story, had become a piece of the patchwork of his new identity, showing him that he was more resilient, more adaptable than he had ever imagined. The years on the road shaped him, refining his spirit and helping him let go of the bitterness he had once felt. The betrayal and heartbreak faded, replaced by a quiet understanding of life's impermanence and an acceptance of all he had experienced. One night, as he camped near the Grand Canyon, he stared out over the vast, timeless expanse, feeling a sense of humility and awe that he hadn't felt in years. The canyon stretched endlessly before him, a reminder of both the beauty and the harshness of nature, shaped by forces far greater than himself. In its depths, he felt his own struggles shrink into perspective. He was just one soul among billions, each of them facing their own battles, each scarred in different ways yet bound by the same fragile mortality. For the first time, he felt truly free, free from the expectations, the regrets, and the burdens he had carried. He understood that he could let go of Emma, not with anger, but with gratitude for the years they had shared and the lessons she had taught him, however painful. Their marriage, as beautiful as it had been, had run its course. And that was okay. He could now look back on it with kindness rather than sadness, and for the first time, he felt ready to build new connections, to perhaps love again, if life allowed. Years continued to pass, and Liam's hair turned silver. He traveled slower, took longer rests, and found joy in even the smallest moments. A sunrise, a good book, a conversation with a stranger. He had learned to live simply and to love deeply, without holding on too tightly. Eventually, he settled in a small coastal town, buying a modest cabin overlooking the sea. It was a quiet life, filled with slow mornings and gentle evenings, and in the town he found a community of people who had, like him, found peace through life's ups and downs. He became close with a few of them, forming a small circle of friends who gathered for meals, celebrated birthdays, and shared laughter and companionship. Liam became something of a father figure in the community, offering words of wisdom to the younger people, lending a hand where he could, and bringing a sense of calm and quiet joy to those around him. As he walked the shore at sunset, feeling the cool ocean breeze on his face, he reflected on the life he had lived, the love he had given and lost, and the man he had become. Liam knew that he had lived fully, embracing both joy and sorrow, and he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey. He no longer yearned for the past or feared the future. He was simply content here and now, living out his days in quiet dignity, a man who had loved, lost, and ultimately found himself. In a nearby town, he met Sarah, a retired teacher who ran a small pottery shop. She had a smile that was both kind and knowing, and though she never pried, Liam sensed she could see right through him. They struck up a friendship over cups of coffee and long talks in her shop, where the shelves were lined with delicate bowls and vases, each uniquely flawed and beautiful. Sarah spoke about her own past, the family she had lost, and the healing she had found in creating something new. Liam admired her resilience, her quiet strength. With time, their friendship became something of an anchor for him. Sarah's presence was calming, her laughter a reminder of the simple joy he had forgotten how to feel. They would sit together in the evenings, watching the sun dip below the mountains, and Sarah would sometimes read poetry aloud, her voice a gentle balm against the ache in his heart. "You know, healing isn't about forgetting," Sarah said one evening, breaking the silence between them. "It's about learning to carry what hurts and still finding beauty in what's left." Liam had never thought of it that way. He had been running, trying to erase the pain by putting distance between himself and his memories. But in Sarah's words, he found a new perspective. Maybe he didn't need to forget what had happened. Maybe he could honor his past while still allowing himself to build a future. On a chilly autumn morning, Liam woke with a new sense of purpose. He said goodbye to Sarah, promising to keep in touch, and continued his journey, but with a different heart. He no longer felt like a man escaping his own life, but like someone rediscovering it. Each town he passed through, every mountain range and open field he saw, felt like a reminder of the world's vastness and the endless possibilities it held. As the seasons changed, Liam found himself reflecting less on what he had lost and more on what he had gained. He thought of his children and the resilience they had inherited, of his friendships along the way, and of the quiet strength he had begun to recognize in himself. He still remembered Emma, of course, but the memories felt softer now, like old photographs gently fading with time. One night, parked along a rocky beach, he built a small fire and sat beside it, gazing at the stars. He felt a profound sense of peace, a quiet assurance that he was exactly where he needed to be. For the first time, he felt grateful for everything that had brought him here: the pain, the joy, the heartbreak, the love. All of it had been part of his path, guiding him to a deeper understanding of who he was. Liam Sinclair was no longer the man he had been before his heart attack or his journey. He was stronger, wiser, and in the stillness of the night, he finally felt whole. The past, with all its shadows, was behind him, and he faced the future with a heart open to whatever it might bring. As he watched the stars and listened to the gentle lap of the waves, he realized he had found something he hadn't known he was searching for: peace, not in forgetting, but in embracing every moment that had shaped him. Liam felt truly free, ready to step forward into the rest of his journey with a heart unburdened, a spirit renewed, and a life entirely his own.